Sunsets. All right, so let's keep going. At-will employment. I know this is simple, but I always like to go over it, and I know that if you were in my training the other day, we talked about it for a second. It means you can be fired at any time for any reason, right? Listen, for supervisory purposes, and especially in Utah, this is the most powerful arrow in our quiver, right? I mean, at-will employment in Utah literally means I can fire you because I'm in a bad mood today. Not a good management technique, right? I mean, I'm going to talk about the legal stuff, and then you guys, you're good managers and supervisors. But I can literally just say, I do not like your blue vest or black vest, whatever that is, you know? You're fired. I'm in a bad mood. We don't get along. We have a personality conflict. I don't like the way that you deal with customers or clients. I just don't like you today. You're fired. That's not against the law in Utah. In Utah, you can fire for no reason at all. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to give a document giving a reason. Now, I'm talking about law, right? Not policy. And we'll talk about policy in a second. But I think it's important to understand that's the starting point in Utah for all employment law. We have at-will employment. Now, of course, NAC has policies in place that we have to follow, right? It's not a policy and it's not a good management technique just to fire someone at any time for any reason. But that's what at-will employment in Utah means. We have policies that you still have to follow. If you don't follow a policy, it's a state court breach of contract issue. It's not a federal court employment issue, okay? So, at-will employment means you can be fired at any time for any reason. It also means you can quit at any time for any reason, right? Also important. Sometimes I have clients who write policies. Just recently I had a client who called me and said, we wrote a new policy that we instituted 6 months ago, and it said, you have to give 2 weeks notice, and if you don't, we're going to withhold a certain amount of money from your last paycheck. Right? You can't do that in Utah, right? 2 weeks notice is nice, it's etiquette, and if someone doesn't give notice, it can impact their reference, but you can't take away pay. There can't be an economic consequence. Just like we can fire at any time for any reason or no reason at all, employees can quit at any time for any reason or no reason at all. There is a consequence if we fire employees without a reason. Number one, we're supposed to do our progressive discipline, right? You try to give people a chance, give them a verbal, give them a written, that sort of stuff. But then the other consequence is, what if we fire people without a reason? There can be an economic consequence too. Maybe not a legal consequence in terms of a federal lawsuit, but what is it? Unemployment. Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun. Unemployment, yeah. We may have to pay unemployment if we fire without a reason, but there's probably no legal consequence. Okay, so at-will employment, that's the general notion. It can be modified in 3 different ways. Number one, if you have an employment contract. Does anybody in here have an employment contract? They don't really exist, right, in America. Very few people have them. I'm not talking about an offer letter. In Utah, an offer letter does not constitute a contract. In Utah, an employment manual does not constitute a contract. In some states, you have different laws, right? But in Utah, we don't have anything like that. So if you have a contract, the contract dictates the relationship. The second time at-will employment can be modified as public policy. I think of it as retaliation or whistleblowing. You can't blow the whistle, make a protected complaint of discrimination and harassment, and then be discriminated against or harassed for it. And then the last one is illegal conduct, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. You can be fired at any time for any reason except an illegal one. All right? Okay. So I talked about how you have this 15 employee threshold, which in Utah creates this interesting circumstance. It means that if you have a purely private employer who employs 11 people, they can sexually harass. You get that? I know it sounds kind of weird, and they do all the time. I mean, you'll hear about things in the paper, in the Tribune Online, the paper. Is there a paper anymore? There's not really a paper. Huh. There's also not a tape, like when you tape things. Do you tape things anymore? There's no tape. All right, but in the Tribune, you'll hear things about a small company that had some sexual harassment case, but there wasn't a valid claim, because there's no state law that protects employees of companies that have fewer than 15 employees, right? So I don't know if you guys remember this story from last time, but I like to tell it. I had a case a couple of years ago, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago now, where this woman had a Mac computer. You guys remember this one? And anybody have a Mac? Is there one in this room? Yeah, okay, so if you have a Mac, there's a little green dot at the top of it, right? And what is that little green dot? If it flashes, what is it?
Video.
Yeah, it's a camera or video, right? Do you remember this from last time? Yeah, so I always like to tell this story because You guys know that you do not have an expectation of privacy to your workspace, right? Yeah, you know that. Your company can get into your workspace, owns your workspace, your drawers, your computer, anything in your workspace. Even if you have a private office, the company owns that space. Did you know that you don't have an expectation of privacy to your work email? Right? Meaning your company can get into your work email, they can look at your work email. Did you know that you don't have an expectation of privacy to your phone if your company pays for it? Meaning, again, they can get into your phone, they own it. But the kicker is now, you don't have an expectation of privacy to anything that you put on the Wi-Fi. Okay, so even if you're using your private phone or computer or iPad on the Wi-Fi, anything you put on the company Wi-Fi, anything you put on the server, the company owns and can access, all right? Meaning the company can, if you're, whatever you're doing, websites you're looking at, the emails you're sending, even if you're sending them on a private email, anything you put on the server, that's kind of scary, right? Now, this is important for you guys to understand, obviously. Hello. Where the line is drawn is what happened in this case. You do have an expectation of privacy to your private image in your private office. Okay, so what happened in this case is this woman worked for a Utah company, had 6 employees in Utah, okay? They were basically owners and management, and then had something like 35 employees in Eastern Europe. This was an iPhone app company. They developed applications for iPhones. The law says that in order to be obligated as a company, you have to have 15 employees within 75 miles of each other. So, you know, these Eastern European employees didn't count, so they only had 6 employees in Utah, meaning Title VII, Civil Rights Act, what we're going to talk about today, did not apply to that company, right? So, in this case, this employee, she had a private office. She's the only female of the 6 in this office. She has her private office. She can close the door. She has some blinds, actually, just like this, and she can close the blinds. And she changes a couple times a week to go to the gym in the office. And as is always the case, she's 23 and cute as a button, you know, and her boss, the owner, is creepy. You guys remember my creepy rule? We're going to go over the creepy rule again. It will save you all a lot of heartache. My creepy rule is very simple. So in this instance, she starts noticing this camera going off every 15 minutes or so. So that green dot's going off. If this ever happens on your computer, it's bad. Right? So this camera goes off every 15 minutes or so, and she lets it go for a week or so, kind of ignores it, and then eventually she's like, well, maybe I should check this out. You know, maybe I ought to look into this. So she goes to the IT guy for the company. He comes back and he's able to conclusively determine that someone has installed some software on her computer that takes a picture every 15 minutes of her, sends that picture to the owner's computer, and deletes it off of hers. So he's able to unwind this and determine that's the case, right? Now we haven't even gotten there, we're going to get there later, but this is a pretty good case of sexual harassment, right? But this is a company with fewer than 15 employees. So in this case, we'll talk about sexual harassment later, but because the company has fewer than 15 employees, she doesn't have a sexual harassment claim under federal law. She may have some small privacy civil rights claims under state law, but they're not great. And state law is really not that great, and they're pretty hard to win. But that's a pretty creepy circumstance, right? I mean, we can all agree that that's creepy. So I wrote a scary lawyer letter to the company, which is what you do when something like this happens. We write scary lawyer letters. The company came back to me and said, oh, he just installed that software. He was just testing it. He was just testing it out, and he forgot to tell her, and he decided he would just start with her. Right? What do you guys think? Anybody buying that?
Totally.
Yeah. So one of the other cool things about Mac computers is they timestamp all the images, right? You can actually timestamp every image every 15 minutes. So I said, okay. And they also said we aren't subject to Title VII. We aren't subject to federal sexual harassment law, and there's no state sexual harassment law for companies of our size, which was true. But there is sort of a market consequence to this sort of thing, right? I mean, my answer was, well, okay, show me all the images. I want every single image for the last, if it was 10 days or something, every 15 minutes. And, you know, maybe you're not subject to that, but we have state claims, and probably wouldn't be good for business if people found out about this, right? So, this is funny, because I said that, and the guy said, okay, we'll go check out the images. They called me back and said, we want to settle. Why do you think that is? Yeah, because she was changing her clothes, you know, and I'm sure they had all kinds of images. They ended up writing her a check, And they ended up having to give me all of the images, right? I said, I want every single image, and they had to certify that they destroyed them. So anyway, that's a first example of some of the creepy cases that I deal with. And, I mean, at NIC, nobody does anything creepy like this, right? No.
We don't have time for that.
Good. That's the answer. That's the answer I'm looking for. No, but
if we did have time.
it's just a time.
That's what we would do.
It's good to know it's just a time issue. Right? If things slow down, it's going to get crazy around here. All right. So there's some good background, kind of a good theoretical intro to what we're going to talk about. And now I'm going to talk about the